welcome to Scrollin', a podcast about the Elder Scrolls Online. I'm Ket.
I'm Davius.
This is episode number 42. All right, let's talk about this press release here. So this thing is titled Destruction Comes to Tamriel During ESO's 2021 Global Reveal Event. So this is basically just an announcement of an announcement. So on January 21st, like a month from now, there's going to be a live stream event where they're just talking about this next year's content, you know, the DLC and expansion and all that stuff that we're going to be getting. They do this kind of at the beginning of every year. They just give us sort of a little preview of what's to come this year. I always think it's really fun to watch. It's really cool. Yeah. They say they're going to talk about the Gates of Oblivion's new worlds, challenges, systems, and adventures. So they're giving us a clue there, Gates of Oblivion, so something to do with Oblivion, which it's like surprising how unsurprising that is, you know what I mean? It's like I wouldn't have guessed Oblivion only because that's too obvious, but yeah, that's where we're going. So I think it's interesting though. They say new worlds with an S, plural.
Yeah.
So that's cool. I don't know. Part of me, like my initial reaction is like Oblivion, really? Like, hasn't that been done like time and time again? But the thing about Oblivion in this world is it's this sort of void space in between different like universes and stuff, is my understanding, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like there are really a ton of possibilities. They could really do a lot of really imaginative, creative things if they decide to. They could really get out there and do some crazy stuff. And think of like the kind of possibilities for like classes or skill lines and stuff like that. You know, they could really get weird with it.
Yeah, I mean, just that statement, you know, new worlds, challenges, systems, and adventures. That's a pretty big time statement. New worlds, plural, like you said, and systems, plural. Yeah, I'm a little curious about that. You know, challenges, adventures, that makes sense. They've released kind of this really short trailer. You can watch it, but out there, it's very short, and I think a lot of people, you know, I've been going through like message boards and stuff, and I think a lot of people obviously are connecting this to the Oblivion game,
right?
And maybe they are tagging along with that, but I actually am kind of looking at this the other way. You know, they've brought Morrowind into the game, they've brought Skyrim into the game. But I think they actually did a really good job of completely avoiding those games. Yes, you know, it's in the same, you know, we're in the same world that those games happened in. So the zones and the geography is the same, but I think that in the past they've shown that they can do a really good job of using the same geography but completely changing the story and having new, fresh ideas. And so
yeah, they do a pretty good job of kind of giving you a wink and a nod, like, hey, remember Skyrim? But this is actually a totally different thing happening.
Exactly.
Here.
So I'm excited about it. I think this is probably going to be, you know, every expansion, everything that's happened, you know, real bad stuff's happening, you know, watch out, we're trying to save the world. But I think this one might be the most serious threat since the original storyline with Molag Bal, just because this is another, I'm guessing here, I'm speculating a lot, but Oblivion usually ties to the Mehrunes Dagon. You know, I can't remember what he is, but I think he's like destruction or something like that, something real bad.
Something bad.
He's something, you know, you can see it if you
good.
watch that preview. He's a big bad dude, but pretty cool. It seems like this might be kind of like the biggest threat we've had since kind of that original storyline threat. So, I'm with you. I think this has a real potential to be really cool with worlds, or we're going through Oblivion gates and experiencing that void or what that Oblivion is. I like the idea of those types of possibilities and what it could contain.
Yeah, so that'll be on January 21st is when this live stream is happening. The live stream is always cool, but my favorite part is always after the official event, there's a Q&A that's usually pretty long, like an hour or more, And that's where they actually will answer questions from people in the chat and go a lot deeper into a lot of the details about the content that's coming out. If there's going to be a new class or a skill line or something like that, they'll usually kind of show that off a little bit and answer questions about that. So that's usually where the really juicy stuff is the Q&A afterwards. So
Get those juicy details.
Oh yeah. So that'll be like a month away. So keep an eye out for that. So that's the future. But in the past, we had a maintenance patch last week. So we're on patch version 6.2.8 right now. And this is the one that addressed a number of bugs that I think were a real pain point for a number of people. Although hilariously, they mention, yeah, we refunded the skill points that werewolves and soul trap people are missing. But Davis, I haven't heard from you yet about this, but I know on the forums players are saying, no, still don't have my skill points.
To make this even more comical, I've been on with my werewolf and I just don't even notice. Like I'm just not even
check.
I don't even check anymore. So if I don't have them back, I'm not sure. It's been so long that I don't know. Now, I say that because my werewolf is kind of a character. Like I leveled him up to be a werewolf. I don't have crafting on him or anything. Like if this was on a character like my main Davius, where I have all the crafting and he is a healer for PvP. I do tank PvE with him. I'm doing all this stuff.
That'd be a real problem for that guy.
Yeah, skill
he
points
needs
are
every skill point.
Yes, I use every skill point on him, and he's got almost all of them in the game. And so if I was a player and this happened on a character like that, I could very much understand being upset and needing those skill points back.
I think at this point, I think they should just give every player like 2 or 3 free skill points.
Give us 2 free skill points.
Just if they can't target the ones who lost skill points, just give everyone a few free skill points, and I think everyone will be happy.
Yeah.
But
yeah, that's not a bad idea. I mean, it's not like it's gonna. I don't think it's gonna, flip the scales in any certain way from that.
Yeah, I don't think so. They apparently fixed the bug that was probably the most annoying to you and me, Davius. In BGs, they fixed an issue where this is a weird one. Fix an issue where group members' ready check could be automatically declined if the group leader entered the BG first while in a different zone from the rest of the group. Very specific conditions there.
Very specific, but that one happened to us multiple times.
Quite a bit where, like, we're grouped together. Oh, the BG queue popped. Sweet. Oh, only one of us got in. And the other one is just stuck not in the battleground.
Just listening. Oh, is it going well in there?
Yeah.
Oh,
sounds like you're having a lot of fun. Cool. We haven't really had a chance to group up that much this past week, so I can't really confirm or deny that one, but hopefully that is fixed for sure, because that is a huge bummer when that happens.
It really is. Yeah, it is a big bummer, because that's what you're looking forward to, grouping up with your friends, getting in the battlegrounds, and then
especially sometimes you're waiting like 15 minutes for the queue to pop, and yeah. Anyway, they also addressed a number of crash fixes related to animations, certain characters being used in chat, multiple spell effects being active. I'm sure some of those were affecting me. I experienced a number of crashes during Battlegrounds, so probably something to do with those animations and having spell effects active is probably what was happening there. So I'm hoping that is not going to happen anymore, because that's probably the second most frustrating bug I've ever seen. Right, the group being split problem, and that one right there. Yep,
those are the 2 big ones, and it's good to at least hear that they're addressing them. I haven't had any crashes this past week, but like you said, we haven't grouped up a whole lot this past week, but things seemingly are better. So I tend to believe those updates.
Yeah. The time that I have had to play, I haven't had those issues. My time's been a little more limited these last couple of weeks, just because I'm in the process of purchasing a house. I've never bought a house before, so it's just taken a lot of my time and energy. I have been playing, still. Nothing can ever fully tear me away from ESO. But I'm just kind of divided at the moment. And once I'm on the other side of this house situation and things start settling back down, I'll definitely get back into my usual groove. But I have been playing some. most of the time that I've been playing, it's been on my own because I just get kind of random moments here and there, and I can't really line up my schedule with you, Davius. So I've been spending most of my time on two characters that I like to play the most for solo situations, which is my Stamina Sorcerer and my Stamina Templar. Those are my best kind of solo characters. And I've just been hanging out in the solo Battlegrounds queue. And it's been a lot of fun. So I just want to start with my Stam Sorc, just because I had an interesting sort of realization with this guy. A quick reminder of the build. It's Briarheart, Sword Dancer with dual daggers on the front bar, Master Bow on the back bar, one-piece Molag Kenna, and the Torque of Tonal Constancy. So this is a great build. I've been having a lot of fun with it. But one issue I've been running into is that I'm still finding that my Magicka pool is depleted more often than I would like. Just a little too often. I don't have the Magicka to do a streak or a dark deal or whatever when I want to. While at the same time, my stamina bar is staying fully pegged at almost 100% all the time. And my stamina recovery has been, with no CPs, fully buffed right around 2,000, which is, for most of my characters, that's about where I like to be. But for this dude, mainly because he's wearing the Torque and he's using Dark Deal, and it seems like way too much sustain. And the thing is, my stamina is hardly ever dipping down low enough to proc the Magicka side of the Torque of Tonal Constancy. And so I'm just not getting my Magicka refilled nearly as often as I want to. So I found that by reducing my stamina recovery, so I'm using all damage glyphs on my jewelry. I'm using the Warrior Mundus stone. So taking down my stamina recovery quite a bit. But actually, having done that, the build feels so much more comfortable to play now. And it doesn't actually even really feel like I'm missing out on stamina sustain. Like I said, it was like basically staying pegged at 100% all the time anyway. Now it actually dips down once in a while, which is something I need it to do to get my Magicka back from the Torque of Tonal Constancy. And what's nice about that is, since I'm a Stam Sorc using Dark Deal, I get that Magicka back. I have the option to turn it right back into stamina if I want to. So it's not really like I'm even giving up the stamina sustain. I have the option to get it right back anytime I want. So I have Streak ready to go a lot more often. I have Dark Deal ready to go a lot more often. The build actually plays a lot more comfortably, taking stamina recovery down a little bit. So that's something, if you're using the Torque on a stamina character, you may just keep that in mind if you're finding that those Magicka abilities aren't ready often enough.
The old Torque Sorcs. It's a life of juggling, juggling resources.
Yeah, and it's so interesting how that interplay between Dark Deal and the Torque. It's like, I'm taking my stamina sustain down, but because of those two things, I'm actually not really giving it up at all, and I'm just getting more Magicka, which is just more helpful to me.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Speaking of Stam Sorcs, I've made some changes. I think you will approve of these.
Okay.
I think my Stam Sorc is slowly morphing into your Stam Sorc. or we've kind of bounced back and forth with the Torque. Maybe
we do that with a few characters. It's like we kind of get inspired by each other, and they just slowly sort of become each other.
They're just morphing. So the big change to my Stam Sorc is that I put Briarheart on him. So he's in 5-piece medium Briarheart armor. That's a pretty big change.
That's where Briarheart belongs, on a Stam Sorc.
It really does. I mean, it's a change. I stole it from my Stamplar, but it's been a great change. So just to kind of remind of the build now, it's 5-piece 7th Legion, 5-piece Briarheart, dual daggers.
That's a lot of damage.
Yeah. The Torque, and then I do 1-piece Swarm Mother to kind of help with max stats. So yeah, it's a lot of damage. It works really well. The kind of the extra health recovery from 7th Legion is with the Briarheart acts for a little bit. I don't want to say tankiness, but kind of helps out with kind of health and healing up on certain situations.
Yep.
But yeah, the weapon damage is very high. It gets up fully buffed. It gets up around 5,500, which is It's pretty hard hitting
yeah.
with the dual daggers with the crit. So
and we always make no CP builds. Like that high of damage and no CP is a lot.
Yeah, and so it's actually really. I mean, it's working really well. You know, you've said it. You've told me Briarheart belongs on a Stam Sorc. I'm here to admit it. For all those listeners who have Stam Sorcs that aren't wearing Briarheart, get you some Briarheart. It's where it belongs.
Yeah, well, it just pairs so nicely with Critical Surge. It's just like such a nice little marriage.
It's perfect, and you know, as you said, with the torque, the sustain feels just right. You're kind of balancing. And a Stam Sorc, more than most other characters, you're using your magicka, using your stamina, so you're always going back and forth. That torque is just always pumping up that sustain, and then it hits. You streak, and then you start hitting and spinning, and it hits real hard. And it's been a great change. I've had a lot of fun with that character recently with these changes.
That's what I love about that setup with the Briarheart and the torque. Like those two things specifically, it's like, man, those are just made exactly for a Stam Sorc. It's just like too perfect not to put those on there.
Yep, very much so. And the one thing I'll say about, I was just going to say real quick about 7th Legion, it's kind of unique, but a Sorc with 7th Legion a Stam Sorc with 7th Legion kind of works better in any time, because Sorcs are real unique in that their armor buff only lasts that 15 seconds, and 7th Legion gives you that buff for 15 seconds, and so it's really nice that those buff pair together. It's a lot easier to keep track of that buff of 7th Legion on this character than it has been with any other character.
What's lame is that's just Stam Sorc. I'm pretty sure Mag Sorc it's 20 seconds. I don't know why. I don't know why it's just Stam Sorc. It's so lame.
It works right now because it lets me know when I have that buff up. But it used to bother me a lot.
It's convenient for that, but otherwise,
otherwise it's a little too short. A little short.
Yeah, these are really good Stam Sorc builds. I will say, sadly, I don't feel like they quite compete with the meta Stam Sorc that's out there right now with Unleashed Terror, Venomous Smite. A lot of them have like the Master's Dual Wield. Just the way the meta is right now, that kind of build is just going to win.
Yeah.
In a 1v1 fight. But I still have pretty good success. You just have to... I think for me, it's just I make the decision like, well, I'm just going to play smart, and I'm not gonna dive into a brawl the way I would with, say, my Stam DK that has that kind of proc heavy build that you can just rack up some kills really quick like that. Like I play smart, I kite, I use my defenses, and I choose my kills wisely. So I think I still have really good success, but it's not like, I'm not going like 15-0 in a match. It's more like maybe like 10-2 or something like that. So I've really been enjoying it, and I like this version of a Stam Sorc. I really don't like just simply being able to win by streaking around the map and I win.
You streak into a group, and then by the time somebody's not stunned anymore, they're below half health.
Yeah. Now I'm talking smack, whereas like I just got done saying, my Stam DK is a very similar kind of build, and it's BS. I can tell you, even being on on the giving end of it, it's not right. It shouldn't be possible to do that much damage that easily. Anyway, so that's Stam Sorc. Also been playing a lot of Stamplar. My old main, old Betsy. She's an orc. Her build is Bone Pirate, Deadly Strikes with a two-handed maul on the front bar, the Master Bow on the back bar, one-piece Molag Kenna, and the Ring of the Wild Hunt. This is my very favorite build. Every time I look at my character select screen and I kind of scroll through all my characters, as soon as it kind of stops on Betsy, I'm like, well, of course I'm logging in with Betsy. How could I even consider a different character now? A lot of it's just I have her cosmetics like just looking so good. A lot of it's just visual. Like once I see the character, it's like, oh, I just want to play with that character.
That's the most important part to any character.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I wanted to talk a little bit. I know I talk a lot about Betsy, but I think a lot of the time when I talk about it, it's just like, oh, it's such a cool build. I have so much fun. Betsy's great. Moving on. I don't often get into what's so great about the build and why I like it so much. So she's a Stamina Templar, and for the longest time, this was one of the classes, maybe the class that I had the least interest in, because I perceived them as being paladins, basically, like these slow, heavy armor, tanky, kind of immovable brutes. Yeah.
The Davies character out there.
Yeah, often probably a Nord. Yeah, exactly.
There you go.
And I've always been more interested in mobility-focused builds that are all more elusive and stuff. So eventually I kind of realized that a Stamplar absolutely can play a mobility-focused spec, and they're actually really well equipped for it. Like the toolkit that their class has, they can play that way really, really well. And so Betsy is all about that. It's all about speed, obviously, with the Ring of the Wild Hunt. It's 7 pieces medium armor. 4 pieces of armor are well fitted. The rest are M-Pen. So she's super duper fast, and she has a ton of cost reduction with the well fitted and the medium armor and her orc passives. She has a ton of cost reduction to sprinting and roll dodging. And then the Templar armor buff, the rune that you cast on the ground that also gives you stamina while it's active, that stamina restore stays active while you're sprinting, you know. So even though your stamina recovery is disabled while you're sprinting, the rune is still feeding you that stamina. And when you factor that in with all the cost reduction that you're also getting on top of your sprinting, you're effectively sprinting nearly for free, right? And so that's a major part of her sustain, because mobility, staying on the move, is how she stays alive. And so her main defense mechanism essentially costs nothing, you know.
She could. Yeah, I've seen it. She can run. She can run forever.
Yeah, and especially I'm talking about in no CP, but especially in CP, like she actually gains stamina while sprinting. It's kind of nuts. So kind of like my Stamsork, she can get away with running pretty low stamina recovery, like fully buffed. It's like 1800 or something like that. But that's a big factor. Plus she has repentance, so she can drain nearby bodies for extra stamina. And there's almost always bodies to drain in a BG, especially with Betsy there, because she's killing a lot of people. So that's one thing. She's just really, really good in the mobility department, and she can kind of keep going and going and going forever and ever and ever. Also, any build in the current meta that has a cleanse is going to be a really successful build, right? With all the procs and everything else that we have right now, just being able to cleanse that stuff off of you right away is really nice. And especially most Stamplars, not all of them, but most Stamplars, this is the only Magicka costing ability on the build. So you can really just spam it as much as you want to most of the time without even having to invest in Magicka at all. It's really, really nice. And then Deadly Strikes. I just want to talk a little bit about Deadly Strikes. It's obviously a great set on a Stamplar. I think it's a great set on a lot of different builds, but I think especially on a Stamplar. It basically just buffs jabs. And on a Stamplar, that's essentially your only source of damage. And I know we have Power of the Light, and I use Power of the Light as well, and it does deal a lot of damage, but its damage is basically 100% dependent on how much damage you do with jabs. So like if you look at Power of the Light, like on Betsy, I think with no CP, the tooltip is like 18,000 or something insane like that. But the thing is, you're never going to hit that tooltip, right? You're never going to get Power of the Light to pop for 18,000 damage in PvP. It's simply not possible to hit that maximum tooltip. So all that's important is when you tag someone with Power of the Light, you have 6 seconds to deal as much damage as you possibly can to get Power of the Light to pop for as much as it possibly can. It's not going to be that maximum. It's never going to be that maximum. But you can get it to be pretty high. So the more damage you're dealing with jabs, the more damage that Power of the Light is gonna deal. So Deadly Strikes effectively buffs all of your damage, every single bit of it, even if some of it isn't actually damage over time or a channeled ability. So it's really, really good on a Stamplar. I really like Bone Pirate on a Stamplar as well. I think it's kind of fallen out of fashion now because Stamina Sustain is so easy to come by. But I really push her stamina to the absolute limit, using that mobility, using the roll dodging, and just spamming abilities constantly. One of the things I love about this build is I absolutely can, like as soon as the BG starts and the countdown is finished, I just pedal to the metal and I never let off until the BG is over. Um, and I'm not really giving up damage for it. I mean, so with obviously Bone Pirate gives me a lot of sustain, and I'm using Dubious Cameron Throne because you kind of have to use that with Bone Pirate. Between those two things, and medium armor passives, I essentially have all the sustain I'm ever going to need. And my damage on my stat sheet, I have just slightly over 5,000 weapon damage on my stat sheet, and that doesn't reflect the Master Bow, and that doesn't reflect Deadly Strikes either. Deadly Strikes, I approximate Deadly Strikes is equivalent, like as far as the amount of damage that it's giving you, it's equivalent to having about another 1,000 weapon damage.
Yeah, it's a pretty massive. It's like 20%, right?
It's 20% increase to damage over time or channeled abilities.
That's big time.
Yeah. So anyway, that's Betsy. I haven't really, dissected her on the show in a while. I always just say like, oh yeah, Betsy's great. Anyway, so I just kind of wanted to dig into her a little bit. She's really, really fast, really fun to play, has a lot of sustain, a lot of damage. Yada, yada, yada.
And as we said, that 5,000 weapon damage is with no CP, so that's a lot of damage, especially with jabs. That amount of weapon damage with jabs that's intense.
Oh yeah, jabs it's so good. It's so good. What's going on with your? I see that you're wanting to talk about your Stamplar as well. What's going on with this character?
Speaking of jabs. Which I have to say, I think jabs. I'm always nervous when I say these very definite statements, but I think I'll go out and say I think jabs is probably the best spammable in the game. I think I'm confident in saying that.
I would say so. It definitely deals the most. It definitely deals the most damage of any spammable in the game. It's undodgeable.
Mm-hmm.
It's like unavoidable. It pulls Nightblades out of stealth.
Oh man, I love having jabs when I'm going against a Nightblade. That's good stuff right there. So speaking of my Stamplar, I have made some changes, and I'm really excited about these changes. This is not changes that are gonna take this character to like the meta or take this character to the top, but this is a character that I've kind of struggled with. Getting the right fit or having, enjoying playing with or having comfortable playing. And I have solved all of those issues. I went back to two sets that I love. My favorite two sets to pair together in the game. I used to have these on my Stamsork, and, I made some Stamsork changes. But I went back. I got 5-piece Ancient Dragon Guard, 5-piece Eternal Vigor. Those two sets are made for each other.
They are.
They're perfect, and then I actually threw the Ring of the Wild Hunt on the character, which is just you've said this. This goes back to the molding characters, but just perfect on a Stamplar. That speed.
What are the weapons?
I'm actually using dual daggers right now. It's kind of interesting that since I was using Eternal Vigor with my Stamsork, that's why I have dual daggers. I don't know if I'll stay with that. I might switch those up to something, but right now it's working. If I had to give this character kind of one knock, it's not the most damage in the world, but the utility on this character just feels fantastic right now.
Sometimes a character just feels good to play, and it can be okay that it's not the strongest. It just feels right.
That's exactly what's happening with this character, and the results are good. It's not getting crazy amount of kills, but it's tough to take down, and it's getting enough kills. And it's had really good results in PGs. So just kind of go back. So just kind of overview. It's 5-piece Ancient Dragon Guard, 5-piece Eternal Vigor with dual daggers, the Ring of the Wild Hunt, 1-piece Baylorg, and then I do the Vatashran 2-hander on the back bar.
Oh, nice.
It's just such a fun character because when your health's above 50%, you're all out attack. And then as soon as you drop below that 50%, you have all this defense and you can just that's when you can kind of find a line of sight, get everything back up. You become immediately tough to take down, and then you just get right back above that 50%, and then you're ready to go right back at whoever you're fighting.
Yeah, it's really cool how those two sets, they really do fit together just perfectly.
So it's works, like you said, you have cleanse, there's good self heals, good sustain on the character. It's nice having that Eternal Vigor sustain. Ring of the Wild Hunt gives the speediness. I was kind of struggling with this character with kind of survivability. That Wild Hunt really fixed those issues combined with those sets, what I was talking about when you drop below 50%. I've just really enjoyed with this character. This will really point out to you how much I've enjoyed this character lately. I did a full remodel of the character. Different look, rocking a new look right now.
And you've been revamping a few characters here lately.
Going through and making some changes. You know, we talked about a couple episodes ago, you know, we're hitting that midlife crisis, just hitting it with each character at this point. You know, they get new looks.
Yeah. That's how we're expressing our midlife crisis, by changing our ESO character cosmetics. Instead of buying a sports car. That's
anytime people see us in Battlegrounds, whoa, did you see Ket and Davius? Man, what's going on with them lately?
That's cool. That Vatishran thing is mean, man. I saw this like non-stealth Nightblade a few days ago that was eating my lunch with that thing. He was like, he was getting me again and again and again. He was really good at pulling that thing off. It's so
easy to get those 5 stacks. I mean, it's basically a passive 190 weapon damage, and you just can, you know, pull that heavy attack out whenever you kind of need some burst. Yeah. It's a great backhand two-hander for sure. Or back bar two-hander.
Should have talked about this earlier when we were talking about press releases and stuff, but the New Life Festival is upon us. It starts Thursday, December 17th. If you're listening to this episode the day that it is released, then it starts today. The New Life Festival
to you.
is right now, going until Tuesday, January 5th. And this is the thing where, you know, you just do these 10 daily repeatable quests and you can get a bunch of random rewards. There is a new quest this year. They added an Imperial themed focused quest. So that's thrown into the mix. I think the main kind of reward that you get for these that most people are going to be trying to collect are these skin changer motifs, which I already have. I think most of the pieces of that I want, so that's not going to be a huge draw for me. But you can also get random housing items, some potions, recipes, some cosmetic stuff, some collectibles like those swords that you can juggle and mud balls and that kind of stuff.
Oh, mud balls. Oh, man. Here they come. Get ready.
And then I guess probably the main thing, if you have any characters that you're wanting to level up, then it's a double XP event. So you have a little while to get that going. And that's huge. You get a double XP. What I always do is whenever I get, like for my daily login rewards or whatever, if I get like a 100% or 150% scroll, I just stash that bad boy in the bank, save it for later. And then when one of these XP events come up, stack those on top of each other. And throw on some training gear as well, and you can level up a character in like an hour, like 0 to 50.
It goes really fast. So quick. Yeah.
So New Life Festival. So let's get into emails. So 2 episodes in a row, we do have an email this week. I think things are picking up around here. We're a legit podcast. Oh yeah. It's popping. They're going to come flooding in any day now. This one's from our old buddy, Grizzly Con. Shout out to Grizzly Con for sending in an email to the
Grizzly Con podcast. Shout out of the week right there.
He says, "Hey fellas, with the changes made to major and minor buffs and debuffs, are there any that are way higher or lower on the priority list than before when considering which ones to use in a build? Are there skills or sets that should be reconsidered for use? For example, Slimecraw used to be a decent monster set, but is now not really worth considering, whereas Restoring Aura and its morphs went from being a pretty good choice to an excellent choice. What about Camo Hunter, Mage Light? XOXO Grizzly Con."
Capital XOXO.
I know. He's really displaying some affection there. I'll say what I think first. Even before these major minor buff and debuff changes happened, for a PvP build anyway, I really never went too far out of my way to get a lot of these into my builds. My major armor buff and my major damage buff are mandatory. Gotta have those. And then for a lot of builds, my major crit buff. But even that, it just depends on the build. I don't consider that to be totally mandatory on every PvP build. Now PvE, totally. You need your armor buff, damage, and crit buffs for sure. Mm-hmm. But everything else is just kind of nice to have, but I'm not really going to go out of my way to get it. Like Minor Berserk, for example, it was 8% additional damage, and it was pretty nice to have. If I could get it into the build without sacrificing something else that I would rather have, then sure, I'll take it, but I'm not going to prioritize that above all other things or whatever. And that's kind of how I felt about most of these major minor buffs and debuffs, is, you know, it might tip the scales if I'm trying to decide between one skill or the other, and if this one gives me that buff, that might be the thing that makes me decide in its favor. So now that they've all been nerfed, basically, you know, it's just even more so the case. I want my armor buff, and I want my damage buff, and maybe my crit buff, and everything else is just kind of nice extra icing if I can fit it in there, but I'm not gonna bend over backwards to do it.
Yeah.
What do you think, Davius?
Yeah, I'm kind of the same thing. I would say I haven't changed a whole lot of things. Kind of like you said, I never really went out of my way in the past, and I don't think that's really changed. I've kind of stuck the same course. If I had to pick out a biggest change for me, it's probably just kind of with kind of my basic formula for a character. You know, I think in the past, it was very much, you know, you find your damage set, you find your sustain set, and then you pair that with mythic or monster sets. And now, that formula for me has kind of changed when I'm putting a build together. Now it's more of, I'm looking at 2 damage sets with the monster set, or fitting a mythic piece in there more commonly, because, you don't really necessarily need a sustain set, just because with those sustain buffs, in jewelry glyphs or a Mundus stone, you can really kind of get the sustain where you need it to be. Whereas before, sustain sets were a little bit more important, I guess I would say. So that's probably
that's something I guess I wasn't
change.
really thinking of, is the major and minor sustain buffs are pretty significant. So those are definitely those have always been hugely prioritized, but even more so now for sure.
Yeah. So that's probably the biggest thing. You know, I know Grizz mentioned Camo Hunter. That is one that I've noticed kind of dropping off a lot of my builds. I used to use it a lot more commonly than I do now, so that one's dropped off a little bit. But yeah, other than that, you know, like you said, I never really aimed for those things. It was just kind of benefits if they worked into the formula, but that hasn't really changed a whole lot. Mainly just dropping sustain set, except for that, you know, that Stamplar setup I talked about, but just kind of dropping sustain sets, which that's probably, you know, if I had to pick kind of the biggest fallout for me, it is kind of that I think there's a lot of really cool sustain sets out there that now don't make as much sense to use, just because, you know, damage is all the rage right now, you know, especially in PvP, which is where we spend most of our time.
I think the Dragon Knight Obsidian Shield or Fragmented Shield, that ability, I think that's one that was considered kind of a staple, especially for stam DKs, that they would use it quite a bit. And now I think that's one that, I think that's one that's probably going to be, you know, maybe some people will use it, maybe some won't, you know, whereas before, essentially every stam DK that I saw would definitely use it.
Yeah, it's a good point.
And then, of course, as we've talked about before, stamina necromancers are affected big time. I don't think it doesn't really affect any decision making, though, as far as, or not any major decision making, like the Major Defile, that having access to 100% uptime of Major Defile attached to a heavy hitting ability, Blast Bones. That's kind of the thing that made them so dominant for so long. It's such a strong debuff to have, to be able to apply it so easily while at the same time taking a huge chunk of your enemy's health bar away. So now that Defile is so much weaker, you know, they've been hit considerably, but I think rightly so, and they're still totally strong. They're a super strong class. I don't think they're suffering. I don't feel sorry for them at all.
Yeah, they were a little overly oppressive, and now they've been kind of seemingly brought down kind of on all the other characters.
But it's not going to affect
level.
your decision making. You're still going to use blast bones, right? So
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess it's kind of weird. Until Grizzly asked this question, I hadn't really thought about it too much, but it's barely affected my decision making at all, because I never really put a lot of emphasis on those things anyway. But that's just me. I know there's a lot of people that really do like try to make sure they have really good buff coverage and they make sure they check all their boxes, especially dueling builds. Maybe if you have some really hardcore dueling buddies, those would be the people to ask, because people who do mostly duels, it really is all about buff coverage, and it's basically just about checking those boxes. And if you don't have all the boxes checked, you lose. That's kind of how that works.
Yeah. The set that kind of stands out to my mind the most, I can't remember the name of it. What's that set that gives you the random major buff? Daedric Trickery? Is that what it is?
Daedric Trickery, yeah.
Daedric Trickery. So that's set to be probably, I don't remember which buffs it can give you, but that one, if I had to think about it, probably got nerfed pretty badly from this.
Yeah, we need to talk to our old buddy Icy and see what the verdict is on
set.
Trickery. He's our Daedric Trickery expert, the one and only person that has ever used it. So that was our email from Grizzly Khan. He emailed us at scrollinpodcast@gmail.com. That's where you can send an email if you would like, scrollinpodcast@gmail.com.
Got to keep that streak alive.
Keep that streak going. Let's go for 3 episodes in a row, baby. Ask us a question, tell us a joke, ask us to dive deeper into something that we've talked about before. Really, whatever you want, as long as you're appropriate and nice. I want to give people a reminder that we are switching our release schedule, our episode release schedule. So for the past, several months, we've been releasing an episode every single week. Going forward, we're going to start releasing episodes every other week. So next week, no episode, but then the week after that, we'll be right back. And this may or may not be temporary. It's something that for sure needs to happen while I'm working on getting this house situation figured out. Once we're on the other side of that, I can reassess and see. But I'm definitely open to the idea of continuing the every 2-week schedule. This podcast takes up quite a bit of my time, and I definitely enjoy it, but there's other aspects of my life that require attention and energy as well. So I'm just trying to balance things out. I definitely don't want to give up the podcast. That's not happening. But I gotta find that balance, especially since this isn't something that I monetize, not something that I really want to try to monetize. So we're just going to try this out for now. We'll see how things go in the future. If anyone has any comments or concerns or anything like that, please feel free to email us at scrollinpodcast@gmail.com. And I think that's probably the end of the episode.
That's cast.
That's cast right there, baby.